So my name's Clare Boulton. I'm head of the Library and Information Service at RCVS Knowledge, and it's my pleasure to talk to you about finding the evidence. But before that, I'd just like to thank our sponsors of this session, Hewlett Gray and Associates. Our sponsors and partners are really important to what we're doing at RCVS Knowledge. Not only those who contribute financially, but people like yourselves who come to these sessions and who hopefully will think about writing knowledge summaries and joining in with some of our efforts. Without you, we can't do it. It's as simple as that. If we follow the Cochrane model, they have 30,000 volunteers contributing to their efforts, so we've got a way to go, but get that out of my pocket, that will help. Right. Okay, so let's crack on. So that's the title of this afternoon's session. Following on from EBVM learning is a bit odd because they've said a lot of what I was going to say. So we'll hopefully do it in a bit more depth. So my session is going to cover how to ask an answerable question, how to search, where to search, and where to access papers, which was the subject of a bit of debate a few moments ago. And just to emphasize where what I'm going to talk about sits within the 5 steps of EBVM, that's where it is. So we're in the first 2 steps of the 5 steps, which in the EBVM learning thing will start with A. On my slide, they don't. Okay, so the first thing is asking an answerable question. This is really important because research answers specific questions. So if you don't formulate your question in the right way, you'll struggle to find the evidence that's available. And there are many ways of doing this, and Marnie and Kristen mentioned SPICO and PICOTS and all the varying ones. The most common one is PICO, so that's the one that I'm going to talk about a little bit today. I'm guessing most of you have heard of PICO? Hands up? Yeah? Any of you tried to formulate a PICO question? Vaguely? Yeah? Okay. Well, you're going to have a go in a minute, by the way. So, PICO, acronym stands for Patient Intervention, Comparator, or Control and Outcome. So, patient, obviously, it's your patient group. So you need to think of how to describe your patient group, what's applicable. And it's why you need to use clinical common sense. Sometimes breed will be really important. So if you're looking at some of the genetic diseases with pure breeds, you might want to look at that. Sometimes age is really important, so geriatric cats with renal failure. It's for you to decide how specific you need to go. Dogs might do, puppies, pregnant bitches, lots of examples on my slide there. Intervention, so this is the specific thing that you're looking at. So it might be a drug, it might be a treatment, a surgical procedure. You know this kind of thing. And then the comparator is the comparison thing you're going to compare it with. Quite often, the comparator is no intervention. So you're comparing use of antibiotics with no antibiotics, or a surgical procedure with no procedure, or you can compare 2 drugs, or you can compare a drug with a more supportive treatment. And outcome is the thing that your patient, the outcome that you want for your patient, that's what you need to bear in mind. So it could be, as I've put on the slide there, improved lameness score, shorter time in hospital, improved life expectancy. It could be, for some people, not about length of life, it could be about quality of life for some patients. When you're thinking about outcome, think about your patients and your patient groups. Okay, so that's PICO, and we're going to have a go at trying to do one together. So if the people who've got the roving mics don't mind if people want to join in with me. So here's a question that's not an answerable question as it stands at the moment. We're going to try and turn it into PICO together. So should dogs with HGE routinely be given antibiotics? anybody prepared to have a go at what you would put in the patient line, in the P line? So they do that there, thanks, Jill.
So you could have dogs or dog,
Yeah.
canine.
Yep. You're right, but you're thinking of all the different words for dogs and canines there. In this particular example, the patient is a dog with HGE, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the lady down here is saying that you might want to add in a particular age group. You might want to be a bit wary about getting too specific, because the evidence might not be there. If you go too specific, it's probably a good thing to do is to start broad and narrow it down than to get really focused in at the beginning. So this is my suggestion. It's only my suggestion. Doesn't mean it's right. That would be where I would start as a patient population. Intervention is easier. I guess everyone would agree that the intervention here is antibiotics, and the comparator would be no antibiotics. And the outcome, now this is an interesting one. It could be many things. I've plumped for reduced time to recovery. This example comes from a course I did a couple of weeks back with some BSAVA members, and their suggestion for outcome was decreased time to discharge from hospital. So I presume that was specific to that particular individual. Yeah? So does that sort of make sense? PICO is just a tool to help you. It's not meant to be a straitjacket. If you can't put anything in any of those lines that makes sense to you, then don't worry about it. It's just a tool to help you. So we've gone from should dogs routinely be given, dogs with HGE routinely be given antibiotics, to in dogs with hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, the patients do antibiotics. The intervention compared to no antibiotics. The comparator, reduced time to recovery. And that's given us 4 things, terms that we can search for when we come to the searching. So, how to search, and this is where what Jill was saying comes in. We need to think of all the ways that people who write literature, researchers, and the way they're reported might have described a dog with HGE. And we've said some, so you need to think of all the synonyms. So I've got some horse examples there. So horse equine with dogs, obviously dog, canines, puppies, whatever. We need to think of all the abbreviations. So TPLO, the full version. And in particular, you need to think of alternative spellings. The American English version always catches people out. Orthopedic, orthopedics, hemorrhagic. And non-steroidal and anti-infectory agents and all those things. Non-steroidal, I've got 2 examples there. It's often spelled as one word, it's often spelled with a hyphen, and it's often spelled as 2 words. And to be sure you get all the literature, you'll need to use all 3 when you search. So here's my example with all the variants that I think you need to look at. There probably are more. Dogs, canine, puppies, hemorrhagic. Notice 2 spellings there. When I was doing this live the other week, I actually spelled hemorrhagic wrong and managed to get results, which is interesting of itself. Typos do sneak through. And lots of words to search for the simple antibiotic. And experience within the team suggests you do have to include all of those words, all of those variations to get literature around antibiotics. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah? So you've got all your terms now, and now we need to go to the database and work out how each database structures its searching. They all work broadly the same with some differences. Nearly always truncation, so putting an asterisk at the end of a word will give you all the variants after that. So transplant with an asterisk at the end will give you transplant, transplantation, etc., etc. Word of warning, if you try and do that with dogs or cats, it doesn't work. If you put cat, asterisk, you'll get catalyst and catastrophe, and don't do cats, cat and cat. Wildcard, with a question mark, works with some databases but not others. Sometimes they use a different symbol, so again, just check what symbols. But that's quite a neat way of getting around the English-American spellings. Phrase searching, really important. If you're looking for a particular phrase, put quotation marks around it. And then the final one there, which is the one that most people don't know about, you can use a command which is either, depending on which database you're in, within or adjacent or near, so that you can look for words in relation to each other. So that there would give you therapy within 3 words of diet. So you could actually do therapy asterisk, so therapeutic and diet. And that's quite a neat trick of getting the literature that you want. So we've got terms, we've used all the commands, and now we have to do the combining them all together. Boolean logic. Who's heard of Boolean logic? Yeah? And you've seen all those Venn diagrams? We saw one earlier. Circles and combined, and people do fancy things with gin and tonic and all sorts of funny examples. I try and avoid that kind of stuff, and Boolean logic is dead simple. It's 3 words and a set of brackets. You combine things with or, which will broaden the search, so cat or dog will give you articles that are either about a cat or a dog. Cat and dog, they'll have to have both terms within, so that narrows it down. And then you can use not if you specifically want to exclude something. I would urge caution with not, because you can easily exclude things that you didn't mean to do. We use it quite a lot to exclude animal modelling when we're doing searching. If you do a search on rabbit, for example, if you're not careful, a lot of your papers will be about lab stuff, lab animal stuff, but we can do not modelling, and that will help. But or and, really useful. Put them in capital letters, just to be sure that the database treats them as a Boolean operator and not does any other sort of fancy stuff with it that you're not expecting. And then you can group your terms using the brackets there. So top one, we're going to look for dog or canine, and then couple it with something else. So the bottom example, dialysis and kidney or feline, which then is bracketed together. How many of you have used that kind of thing in searching? Anybody? Quite a few of you, thank you. Yeah, it's quite a powerful way of doing it. I would always start with or and then work down and see where we go, unless you really do need to have both. If you were doing a search on comparing two drugs, 2 trade names or something like that, if you use and, if there isn't an article that directly compares those 2, you've missed everything about those particular drugs. Whereas if you used or, at least you will get some papers, and then you can use your clinical judgment to see whether there's anything in there that's applicable or that you can pull out of them. Okay. So here is a fairly simple search on our question. So the first line is the dog line, the second line is the HDE line. Again, so I've got the 2 spellings, and I've got the acronym version. And then the third line is the antibiotic line, and I've used the truncation symbol and the phrase searching to reduce the number down. And then in the fourth line, I've just anded all the lines together. So in the end, we're searching on all of those terms to see what we get. I ran that in Cab Abstracts yesterday, day before, and there were 36 results from 1973. If I was doing this for real, and there was more room on the slide, I would probably have put some search terms in there around diarrhea and bloody diarrhea and things like that. But you start somewhere and then you build it up. So here are my top tips for searching. Before you start, decide what you want. Do you want what's called high recall, which means everything that's ever been written on a topic, which you can broaden your search out in that way, but you'll have to do a lot of filtering and a lot of appraisal and a lot of reading. Or high precision, so you want to be really, really specific, so you only want a dog of a certain age with a certain condition. But the risk of doing that is you will miss papers that could be relevant. Do a quick plan first. I never search without writing stuff down first, words, so you know where you're going. It's iterative, it's not a one-time thing. You do something, you have a look at the papers, the results that have come back, you see what terms you're missing, you add those in, you run it again, see what happens. Try combining the rows in different ways, etc. Save your searches, always. Save what you've done, document what you've done so that you can go back, repeat it. And most importantly of all, it's all practice. It's all about practicing this. None of it's difficult, but practice. The EBVM learning resource that you've just seen has got some fabulous examples. You only saw a sneak preview of them. I put a 4-line search on. They've got a 32-line search, I think, with all different combination of words and rows with really clear explanations at the side. So the EBVM learning module, really good place to look. And then there's some practice where you can actually you can do it yourself and get marked as you go. So practice. Okay, so we've done the how to search, where to search. Just a few moments ago, Marnie mentioned the importance of synthesized research. If you just want to know if anybody's done a review, what is the best recommended treatment for something, the clinical bottom line, there's lots of synthesized material out there, but it might be that you want to do a full search of the primary sources, in which case the best place to search will be a bibliographic database. Here are a few secondary search places. Marnie mentioned Best Bets for Vets. Really good, growing database. Anybody use Best Bets? Yeah? Good. And also from Nottingham, there is their bibliographic database of systematic reviews, VetsRev. Again, a really good place. I'm guessing people have used that? Yes, no? People always say that there aren't many systematic reviews in veterinary medicine, but if you actually look at the curve, it's like that for about 20 years, and it's going like that. So there are getting to be more. VetsRev is updated once a month, so that's a good place to look. And another place that you'll hear more about in the last session this afternoon is RCVS and Knowledge's new online journal, Veterinary Evidence. I'm giving away a secret there because I've got the URL on the screen. It's not officially launched yet. And that's where we'll be publishing our knowledge summaries, our critically appraised topics. But there are loads of other places out there. Banfield do some critically appraised topics in the equine world. The EVJ often publishes things. So that's secondary sources. The slide that's going to come up is free databases. Here we go. So free places, right. Who searches Google as a first port of call? Anyone? Yeah? First port of call? Yeah? Because it's free, it's easy, it's there, we all do it. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you're aware of the limitations. The main one is you get a load of junk. That's very true. Google does indeed tell you what your clients are going to say when they come in. And that's a good a reason as any to look at it. As I say, it's free and it's easy to use, but just you all know that you get a load of rubbish, you get hundreds and hundreds of hits, and you probably only read the first 2 pages. and you don't actually know why Google's put one higher up than the other because it's a trade secret what they're doing in there. Anybody use Google Scholar? Yeah? I say, yes, use Google so you know what your client's going to say, but if you're doing searching, rather than Google, I'd use Google Scholar because it's indexing, crawling academic sources, university websites, journals. You will get less of the rubbish. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. PubMed? Yeah?
Can I just check, does PubMed do all of the synonym searching for you? So if you put in dog, it meshes all of it. So you can copy and...
Yeah, PubMed does do exactly that. If you, as most of the proper databases do, you can do synonym searching using their controlled vocabulary. The last one on the list there, PubAg, is a fairly new one, which is an agricultural database similar to PubMed. But there is quite a lot of stuff on production animal and animal welfare in there, so it's worth searching because it's free. As you can see on there, PubMed, which everybody uses because it's free, actually only covers 36.5% of the veterinary literature, according to research done by the Nottingham people. So if you just search PubMed, you are going to miss stuff. Just by very nature, it's not in there to be found. So I would say if you only have access to free databases, search PubMed and Google Scholar in combination. So if PubMed's only 36.5, what is the best database to search? Well, Nottingham's research show it to be cab abstracts, which they found to cover 90% of the veterinary literature. How many people have ever searched cab abs? A few. It's a really good database. It is really expensive, really expensive. So mainly people who have access to that would be in academia. But Cabby, the publishers, aware that actually the fee is a barrier to people in practice, have bought out something called VetMed Resource, which contains the veterinary subset of cab abstracts. So with VetMed Resource, you will get that 90% coverage. You don't get the wider stuff in cab abs that's not vet stuff. But at least that is affordable. So anybody use VetMed Resource? Anybody, yeah? It does indeed. How many people are BSAVA members? How many of those people, keep your hand up if you knew that you had access to VetMed Resource as part of your membership? That's better than the other week. When I did this course, as I said, with BSAVA, 12 BSAVA members in the room and only 2 knew that they had VetMed Resource as part of their membership.
It's a nightmare to access even through BSAVA.
So there we are. It's a nightmare to access, apparently. RCVS Knowledge members also have access to VetMed Resource. The people were saying earlier what good value RCVS Knowledge is for full text access. This comes as part of the package as well. It's fairly affordable for large practice groups as well, as in low thousands rather than VetMed's cab abstracts 40,000 or so. It's worth exploring if you can get access to that. The earlier session, people were talking about how difficult it is to access full text of journals because it's behind paywalls often. There is a growing open access movement. JVIM, Journal of Veterinary Internal Medicine, became open access earlier this year. Most subscription-based journals do publish individual articles on open access, but even if it's not the full issue. And as I think it was Marnie or somebody said, if you've got an article title, this is a good time to use Google. Take your entire article title and stick it in Google, because if there is a full text available anywhere, Google will find it for you if you just copy and paste the title in there. As they said, the people in the States often make them available in institutional repositories, etc. I'm guessing most people in the room have individual journal subscriptions within the practice, so you would subscribe to EVJ or something, is that right? Yeah? And I'm guessing within the practices you'll be members of associations, which gives access to journals as well. So that's another way of getting full text. How many of you have done that horrible pay-per-view thing, found an article you really liked and gone, oh, I'll pay $30? Anybody ever done that? No. Don't. Please don't. I'll do a big sell on the library now. RCVS Knowledge Library, as Jackie said earlier, it's £90 a year, unlimited downloads to most of the veterinary journals. Why anyone would pay $30 to some publisher rather than £90, I don't know. It just doesn't make financial sense to me. So please don't. Please, please, please don't. RCVS Knowledge Library, it's the professions library, it's your library. Vet nurses, it's £35, you know. And you will get access to the full text of most stuff that you want. Right, here we go. We're nearly finished. So you want to put this into practice. If you want some support, if you've got questions, if you're not sure, please do contact myself and my colleagues, either by email there or phone us up. We run workshops on literature searching either in person, you can come into us, or we can do it online. We've put lots of help available in EBVM toolkits. So we've got toolkits on searching, on formulating PICO, on critical appraisal checklists, etc. So knowledge is a good source of support. Obviously the Centre for Evidence-Based Veterinary Medicine in Nottingham are another good source of support. And as you saw, there's the new EBVM learning tool, which you can do at your own pace and your own time, in as much depth as you want to. It's really good. Do have a look at it. So I will leave you with two things to think about, to put into practice searching the best available evidence that you have. Work out what the best database is that you have access to. If it's PubMed, then that's fine. But work out which one it is and find out how it works and learn to use it to the best of your ability, because it will save you time in the long run. And my second thing is work out what the most cost-effective way to access a wide range of full-text journals is for you and your practice. It might be subscriptions, it might be joining associations if you get a lot more, as well as the journal access, CPD and whatever. But really seriously have a think about whether it's worth a couple of people in your practice joining RCVS Knowledge Library and acting as a sort of information hub for your community, so that you can do critical appraisal, so that you can run journal clubs, and so that you can put it into practice. If this works, great. Any questions? You just wait for the mic, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. This is really interesting. It's more a comment than a question. I work within the veterinary pharmaceutical industry, and just to say that if you do have questions about a particular medication and maybe the trials that have been done running up to that have been published, we're often happy to provide reprints or electronic versions of the studies in question. So it's worthwhile starting with talking to the marketing authorization holder to see if they can provide you that information free of charge.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think it's very easy to be put off when you're faced with that. You've got to pay for this, just so, oh, I can't do it. But sometimes if you work at it, then access is easier than you think. There's a question there.
For personal curiosity, how long does it take, the whole process, roughly, of search, of putting all the words, once you have the, once you're good at it?
Once you're good at it, it's as long as a piece of string. I mean, my colleague sitting down the back there will say that some searches you can do in an hour, some, can take best part of a day. If you're honest, half a day. It gets easier with practice, but sometimes you don't find what you're looking for and you're fairly certain it's in there somewhere, and you do have to keep working at it and changing odd terms and reading abstracts and the keywords that have been indexed. And say,
is there any way to eliminate the results that you have already dismissed, like when you change research? I'm not sure it makes sense, the
Do
question.
you mean in the actual search, or when you?
No, in the results. So let's say you look for dog hemorrhagic diarrhea, and then you change in dog hemorrhagic diarrhea antibiotics. Maybe you will find the same kind of results in both research, but maybe some of them you don't want to see them because you already know you don't need them.
It's harder to, I mean, it's possible to a certain extent within the search, but you can certainly report out the search into a reference management system and then do that sort of filtering within that. And that's another thing I haven't mentioned because we're a bit short of time, but if you report searches into reference management systems, EndNote or RefWorks, then it actually makes keeping track of what you've done much easier. Anybody else? Jill's got one. And then we'll do one there first.
Somebody asked in a previous session about, excuse me, sharing papers. So say you're doing a journal club or something, because you mentioned that before. So if one person in the practice has knowledge library membership, can they download that PDF and then print that out and share that with the rest of the practice? And what are the legalities behind that?
Shall I not answer that question? If you look at the terms and conditions of most publishers' websites, then the copyright law hinges around personal use, i.e. an individual, and not commercial gain. I would say no one's going to go for you if you share it within a practice-based journal club. But if you then start sending it off all over the world, then that would possibly become an issue. Copyright law is really interesting and really tricky, but actually, I think if you use common sense, then yeah. But everyone always says this is the letter of the law, and people interpret as they wish. And there's a lady down there with a question.
Hi there. My question was really about the practicalities of using the RCVS library.
Okay.
So if we want to do that kind of literature search but don't have direct access, do we give you a PICO question and say, can you find all references related to that, or how does it work?
I mean, you can do that. We can do searches for people, and we do. There is a charge for that.
Okay.
Or we can give you the tools and give you access to things where you can do it yourself.
So we just do it linked through computer to...
Yeah, so Knowledge Library members have a login that gives them access to the resources. But we would always help we'd help anybody, but if the library members, if you're having difficulties and you say, what do you think about this research strategy, email us, we'll give you feedback.
Okay, wonderful,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any more questions anywhere? What's this on time again? That's my 45 minutes. I think if there aren't any more questions, tea and coffee are available very shortly in the assembly room, if I've got that right. And thank you for your time.